Good evening, ladies, again, and welcome to another episode of Heartline Lifeline, where we explore matters of the heart and matters on your heart as women, offering a lifeline of support through wisdom, compassion, and love. We're your
We're your
hosts.
host.
I am Iris Savage Dargan, minister and personal and executive coach with DMP Coaching.
And I'm Natasha Bailey, licensed marriage and family therapist with Mind to Men Therapy. And please remember, you can tune in here every third Thursday of the month on GOD1 Radio and on Facebook and YouTube as well. So go ahead right now, mark your calendars for the third Thursday in November, which will be November 20th, right before Turkey Day. We have some exciting shows coming up, and we don't want you guys to miss it. So make sure you tune in. So Iris, if you can please open us up with prayer.
Sure thing. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for another day, Lord God, to come before you and to use our gifts. God, we ask that you would allow something that is said or done tonight, Lord, bless your daughters. And God, we ask that you would think through our minds and speak through our voices and just bless your people. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. So tonight we are focusing on we're focusing on something that so many of us face in midlife, and that is career pivots. This is part 2 of our Women in Transition series, where we are giving voice to the many facets of the midlife rebirth nobody talks about. Natasha, can you bring us up to speed on what we talked about last time?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great show. I learned some things as we were talking. And we talked about the sacredness of midlife, right? And how sacred it is, and kind of to honor that time as a rebirth. Also, the impact of the silence about midlife, like, people are embarrassed or don't want to talk about it. And various transitions women experience in midlife, like relationships, empty nesting, career changes, and whether midlife, if it's too late to thrive and start over. And so tonight, we're going to really do a deeper dive on focusing on something that so many of us face in midlife, which is career pivots. And I'm really excited about this topic because we have someone special.
Yes. So career pivots are becoming increasingly common in our culture, particularly due to, the rise of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, as well as company reorgs and layoff. So today, to help us unpack this topic, we are excited to welcome a special guest and my good friend, Yolanda Owens. Yolanda is a senior professional in human resources, a certified mediator, and lead consultant for end-to-end HR solutions. She has over 25 years of experience as an HR professional with several Fortune 100 companies. Welcome, Yolanda.
Thank you, Iris. Excited to be here and look forward to having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much, Yolanda, for being here. I'm excited about our conversation. So what I like to do is just to do a quick Heartline Lifeline mental health check-in. This is usually how we start our show. So before we go any further, I want you to grab a mental notepad or just take a breath with us. So everybody, if you can, just a cleansing breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Drop your shoulders. I want you to just take a moment and think, on a scale of 1 to 10, how balanced do you feel physically and mentally? And so if you're at a 1 or a 2, it might mean you're running on empty, or maybe a little distracted and tired, or maybe disconnected from your needs. If you're at about a 5 or a 6, you're hanging in there, you're doing okay, but maybe some rest or movement might be helpful. And then, of course, a 9 or a 10, that's great. That's where we all hope to be. And it means you're feeling strong, steady, and really in tune with yourself. So there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no judgment if you're not in, the 9 and the 10s, but it just really becomes a way to check in with yourself as awareness of, the act of healing. So I'm going to give myself a good 7 right now. I'm feeling about a 7 on that scale. And I want to ask you, Iris, what number would you give yourself? How are you feel? How balanced are you feeling physically and mentally?
I am about a 5. I had a pretty busy weekend, did some travel, air travel, and hung out with about 15 of my very good posse girlfriends, and then went into a very busy week. So I need some rest.
You can recharge. Gotcha.
Yes. Yolanda, what about you?
I'm ranking at about a 6. I
Okay.
am feeling good, but I'm feeling uncertain on a few things. And so it's keeping me from my total level of peace. So I'm really looking forward to how I
Mhm.
can learn from this conversation so I can get to a 10.
Gotcha. Yeah, see, that's the power of checking in. Like you catch the signs early when you can just scale and stop, take a breath, and like, where am I on this scale so you don't head to burnout, right? Sometimes we get to burnout and then we realize, oh crap, I was running on 2 and doing too much and should have said
Mhm.
no. So for anyone listening right now, wherever you are on the scale, just give yourself permission just to pause, just to breathe, and to notice. And that's your lifeline moment. And if you want to share, if anybody's logging in on the chat, please share your number with us if you care to do that. And so I will turn it over to Iris.
Okay. And I just want to add to what Natasha just said. Remember, this community is a lifeline. So you don't have to feel like you have to walk through any of that alone. So tonight, we're diving into part 2 of our Women in Transition series, the Midlife Rebirth Nobody Talks About. And tonight we are focusing on career pivots in midlife. So before we start our conversation, we always have to anchor our time in scripture. So I'm actually going to just read some of the same scriptures from last time, the last episode. I won't read the entire thing of Ecclesiastes, but I do want to highlight Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1 and verses 11. Verse 3 says, there is a season, a time opponent, a time appointed for everything and a time for every delight and event or purpose under heaven. And then verse 11 says, he has made everything beautiful and appropriate in its time. That includes you ladies. So if you are feeling like it is time for something new or God is shifting things in your life, this very well may be the right time. I also want to remind you of the scripture in Psalms to help us to reframe this season of midlife from a crisis to, let's just call it a checkpoint. So Psalms 92 verses 12 and then verse 14 says this, the righteous will flourish like the date palm, long lived, upright, and useful. They will grow like a cedar in Lebanon, which is majestic and stable. Growing in grace, they will still thrive and bear fruit, and get this, and prosper in old age. They will flourish and be vital and fresh, rich in trust and love and contentment. That was the amplified version. So remember, ladies, this season of our lives is sacred. We talked about that last time. We can flourish, we can thrive, we can be fruitful. We may not be able to have kids, but we can be fruitful in other ways and have stability.
Yes.
And it's that moment where, this season is where the moment where your body and your mind and your spirit just kind of whisper, it's time for something new. Time for something new. So oftentimes in midlife, we experience a career pivot. I experienced a career pivot. I went from project management engineering to becoming an executive coach. I did that in 2018. So I guess that was kind of midlife. But these pivots can be by choice, by choice or forced by external factors. Mine was actually by force because I got laid off. And so I said, you know what? I don't think I want to do what I did before. So let me just take some time to figure this out. And I actually engaged a coach too. And by the time we finished our engagement, she was like, I think you'll be great at being an executive coach. So here I am. But this is also a time when many of you will ask yourselves, is this career still fulfilling me? Right? What would it look like to create a healthier, more balanced version of success? So, let's talk about it. So, Yolanda, I want to bring you into the conversation. I want to start off with some statistics. Can you tell us what are the statistics of women in midlife seeking new roles right now, particularly Black women?
Thank you, Iris. So one of the things that we can have to know is the data is delayed. So the Bureau of Statistics is not available for us today. But I can tell you right now, there's a Forbes magazine article that talks about the 300,000 Black women that are now out of work. So we can assume that at least 50% of them probably wants or needs a job. And so we have to stop and refocus and figure out how do we make sure that they're supported while they go through this job hunt process. The employment rate for mid-career women, and that's ages 25 through 54, has reached an all-time high though. So while we have $300,000 roles that have been eliminated, we're still showing at a rate of 77.8% of employment, and that is based on 2023 data. So we're not as bad as we've ever been, but we know there are challenges in the job market. So that may make it difficult for some folks as they kind of seek their next opportunity.
And I just want to clarify, that is just women only. We're talking 77.8% of women that are unemployed since that was the 2023 data. That's high. Wow.
That's really high, especially because a lot of women are in households, often single moms and things of that nature. So that's very good. Thanks for that, Yolanda. Can you, from your HR lens, how has the perception of midlife professionals changed over the years?
So I think that I have experienced over my 25 plus years of HR that there is probably less tolerance for the more mature staff, because a lot of times there are leaders that are very new in their careers, bringing the new way of doing things. So there's a little bit of tension there. Not knowing what to do with mid-career employees. So oftentimes those are the employees that are impacted. They either are highly compensated, it doesn't fit the company's model anymore. And so those are some of the challenges that I think we really have to kind of think about. And the midlife professional, it's not as valued. You know, the work is changing, the technology is moving really fast. And so what you learned 20 years ago might be completely obsolete. So that valuable resource in the employee base needs to be one that's keeping up with the current focus areas and the skills that are needed as we move through this, technology AI experiment.
So I have a question for you, Yolanda. Seeing that the workforce is sort of, there's an age gap between, you have the younger people that are in managerial positions now, and then you have seasoned professionals that are there, and some of us are in managerial positions as well. What, if anything, are companies doing to sort of bridge that gap to, bring more cohesion to the workforce?
So I wish I had an answer that was like, well, all companies are doing this, but we don't. I think good managers and good leaders show up with the important focus on the whole team and the productivity of the team. So I think what I've experienced is where there are opportunities for one to grow as a mid-career professional, they have been very focused on building that relationship with those leaders so they know the skills that they bring back to the table. So it's not a perfect science, it's a perfect storm. Being ready to walk through that storm with the understanding that they may or may not get you and understand how your talents can serve the company is it's challenging. And so we just have to figure out, how do they keep hearing us? And so we can talk a little bit more about that. But now when we started, we were young, right? Well, when I started, I was young. And so now we're talking about mid-career. I'm like, that's me. Like, how do I now manage through the situation where I'm now that mid-career professional? And so I show up like the big auntie.
Okay, auntie.
We like that.
Right, the big auntie. Okay. Excuse me. So, since, as mid-career professionals, we're, finding ourselves in this sort of quandary here. What are some signs that it might be time to pivot, Yolanda, that it's more than just a rough patch that you're going through at work?
Oh, goodness. This is a great question. And so I think that what we have to start doing is listening for the cues. So if you find yourself not being invited to key meetings where you think you should be part of those meetings, that's a sign.
Mhm.
You are not being included in future planning, that's a sign. If you have, a junior staffer, I'm going to call them for a simple description, showing up and now they want to be your manager and your manager is supporting, allowing that person to build their management capability while they manage you when they've got like a half a day in the corporate environment, that is real. And so you have to start thinking like, whoa, what am I going to do? How am I going to show up and make sure that they see the value I bring? And that's really important. So once you start seeing those simple little things where your manager is not talking to you about the next opportunity, or their language is around, kind of a static, this is where you do really good and we want you to keep doing it. So when we master a skill set, we should master it and then put it on the shelf and learn something new. When
Mm.
because you mastering the skill set allows them to say this is the one thing you can do when you are able to do many different things. So I think those are some of the things that we need to think about as we figure out how do I function during this period in my life. And I think that's so important that we kind of start having real conversations about it.
So they can't just put you in a box, and when you say master more skills, so you're not just like stuck on the same thing over and over. Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very.
Mhm. So let's go to the audience. I know, I think I saw Nina put in that she was a 7. I don't know if anybody else has checked in, but if you guys, Guana is a 5. Hey, Guana. Hey, Nina.
Hi, Tiff. Hey, sis.
Tiffany's here. Thank you all for joining. If you all have any questions for Yolanda, please put those in the chat as well. We have some questions for her, but we certainly would like to hear from you. And if you have experienced some of these things that she talked about, let us know, because we know that these things are real. They're definitely happening in excuse me, y'all, in the workplace. So Yolanda and Natasha, this area comes with, being midlife. We talked last time, it's just a huge transition, and we have to really come to it with a sense of purpose, and we're going to master this. So what are some common fears that you hear from women who want to make a change, but they hesitate, right? How can they move through those fears? So what are some of the things that you all hear?
So Natasha, you want me to take it first?
Yeah, go for it. I'll follow you.
I think one of the things that I hear when I'm going to call employees or women in midlife want to make changes is, are they financially ready? Is there stability available to them from that financial perspective? I also say some of the fears also family structure, where you're like now in the sandwich generation, where you might be caring for aging parents and your younger children. Um, Responsibilities of life, where you are the person, you're everything to all the people. They come looking for you for the strong one, and then just not being comfortable with change. You want something different, but in order to get something different, you've got to do something different, and that sometimes is where we really just get stuck. Like, how do I move out? of this position in order to continue to grow. And I think we are like thinking about all the real world issues that are impacted by decisions. And so I got to keep it real. I need to feed my family. So now what do I do? So I think really just addressing those type of issues are some of the fears that I hear.
Yeah, that is good insight, because midlife often brings like career crossroads, and like you said, the sandwich generation and different phases if you're supporting a child in college, and the burden falls on you. So I like to ask people at that stage, like, is this still aligned with who I'm becoming? I know personally for me, I was working in the middle school, high school for a long time as a therapist. And after COVID, just everything that came with supporting, high school students at that time and adolescents and teenagers, I started to realize, okay, maybe the therapist I'm becoming now has graduated from that population because I did it for 10 years and I was moving into midlife. So some of those conversations that the teenagers having with me, I wanted to talk to women that were older women. So I realized at that time, okay, maybe I'm aligned with changing my niche or the population I want to serve as a therapist, because I was getting older and wanted to transition. I would say, maybe success sometimes looks like peace, or maybe having more flexibility. Sometimes you just maybe want to have more time off, or you want to be able to work from home or do something more in the creative sector. And some people want to go back to school and get a new degree. I know Iris, the last show, was saying something about going back to school and getting that PhD. Is that right? Are we still thinking about that?
Yeah, it's on the table.
It's on the table, yeah. So, and a business too. I am, self-employed and an entrepreneur. That was something I did in midlife as well. And then often I think the mentoring others is a big component, because at this time we were wise. We have some experience, like we said last show, we know some stuff. And then for others, it's just simply they just want to slow down, maybe work part-time, maybe not do as much as they want to, because they have, arrived at that. So let's ask the audience, what is one area of your work that no longer fits, and what door might God be nudging you toward? And we have a comment. My pet pal Ross says, is it possible to just do our jobs and keep peace, or do we have to stand out? What do you think about that, Yolanda? I'm gonna ask the HR professional, because I got a different answer as a therapist. So let's let the HR professional take that.
So you want to be known as the peacemaker, but you don't want to be run over and thrown under the bus. I think that you can do your job with authenticity and still be successful. There are certain people that want things done a certain way. You have to know your clients and who you're dealing with. And I would say customize your reaction and response based on each of them. Because like keeping the peace, yeah, that's a good thing. You don't want to be the hellraiser. You want them to hear what you have to say. And when there's a lot of noise with that, they often miss what you're trying to say, and therefore you become the problem. So just be very strategic in how you bring forth any concerns, offer solutions as part of that. And I think that you will be having peace and satisfaction, because I think they can coexist. And just because there's a little bit of conflict does not mean that there's no peace. It's just going to sharpen you for the next opportunity. And that is what we're really looking for.
Yeah. And also, Yolanda, just to add to that question about standing out, do you have to stand out and keep the pace with those other younger employees?
I think you have to always be present in the moment. And so that means if you have to run a little faster when you really don't feel like it, do it. There's a social aspect of the community in which they build. You should really be part of that community, because if you're out there not in community with anyone, I think it puts you at risk, because people don't see you as a team player. You might not show up as the person that they think they can ask tough questions to, or if there's defensiveness when there's maybe an exchange that's not very peaceful,
Mhm.
I'll use that word, they can say, well, they're scared because, I can't say what I really want to say. Younger staff. So for the young folks, so listen, we used to be young once too, but
Mhm.
sometimes, they're a little tender, like can't take the hard answer. And we have to really manage to the sensibilities of all the employees up and down the experience line. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well
yeah, I'm
said.
gonna
Yeah.
stop right there.
Well said. Well said. And I think too, just dropping in like your mental health while you're in the midlife transition, like you may have more stressors, your body, your mood, irritability, your hormone, right? And so really making sure you're grounded, you're really taking care of your mental health, you're having fun things to do, because even though, it may just be that one nerve that one day because you didn't sleep the night before, or,
Mhm.
so really understanding like your mood when you go into these meetings and things like that, because sometimes it's out of your control when you're in this stage of life, and it comes out your mouth, you'd be like, oh man, that wasn't good, because the mood irritability is real with hormonal shifts in midlife too, so we gotta
Mhm.
kind of action plan for that part too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just want to
I think
that
too. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
no.
sorry. I was going to say we're going to talk about ageism, but I think too that there should be um, some accommodation for menopause.
We should get off early, like what?
Like right now, we have accommodations for a lot of things, right? But when I'm breaking out in a sweat in a meeting, I should not be the topic of the joke, right? There should be some sensitivity to the fact that I'm of a certain age, right? Or if I'm moody, right? So I do. I think that there should
Grace.
be some accommodation, some grace, some something, some sensitivity training for us.
Yes.
And don't just try to put us out to pasture, but understand where we are. Just like we have to understand them, the younger people, they need to understand us women.
That
Amen,
sounds
sis.
so ideal, but
So
they
we're
don't
gonna
really care that.
advocate for menopause perimenopause accommodation
I am. I'm
in
going
the
to advocate
workplace.
for menopause accommodations and sensitivity training.
Look, they
We get
gave
to
me a
control
fan,
the
and I'm over here
AC
hot.
fan. Yep, we get to control the AC and have personalized fans however they come.
Right. Do not.
In all seriousness, Iris, I understand what you're saying, and because there is a medical situation. But here's one of the things I've learned over my career: if you go to work and you have this illness or condition, they don't care you came to work. So all people, when you get to work, they don't only care that you came to work. That's most of the reality of it. So they're not really sensitive to the fact that I brought out my fan, and when I start fanning, then they have to. My 32-year-old coworker has to ask a male, "What's wrong? Why are you hot?" And I'm like, "Ask your mama." You know.
Where your fans at? Get your fans. Do it with me.
Okay.
So, Sister Jackson said
That's
ADA regulations for menopause, right,
Yeah,
sis?
this
So
is
for
too
sure,
good.
but really back seriously though, let's talk about the elephant in the room, since we're kind of already talking about it, like age bias. Like what's the best way to navigate or even reframe that challenge with age bias?
okay.
Can you ask that question again? I'm sorry,
Sure,
I was
yeah,
picking up.
the age bias. Like, what's the best way to navigate or even reframe the challenge if we are, in the market to look for a new job? And how do we, present ourselves? Sometimes we may look younger than people think, like we were talking
Yeah,
about earlier when we met, but we know we're a certain age. So if we are, we have 10, 15 years experience perhaps, or making a resume and things like that, like how do you kind of navigate that when you're more seasoned looking for a career?
yeah. So, thank you for that question, because
Mhm.
let's start with the age bias. Nobody intentionally shows up. Well, I let me restate that. Most people don't intentionally show up to create an environment that is not fair and equitable. Most folks want to be treated with clarity, professionalism, and equity. So that's something. how do we show up when you are aged? So when I show up, they're confused because my gray hair confuses people, and they think, "How old is she?" And I've been like, feel free to ask me, because if it helps us kind of break down the barriers, I'm willing to have that conversation. Um,
Mhm.
but when we talk about recruiting and going out to look for jobs, the number one thing that they'll tell you is make sure you don't age your resume. And how
Mhm.
do you age your resume is when you start talking about, the very first job you had and you've been in the workforce for 30 years. Well,
Mm,
that's too much for them to process. And there's a question about the relevance of that experience when you um, go through that recruiting process. So I
mm,
Mhm.
suggest, and industry suggests, that you show your last 10 to 15 years on your resume, and after that, you can drop off any of that experience. But then oftentimes I hear, but I really need that to show. Well, then show it as a career accomplishment without a date. So you want to minimize dates as much as possible, because it allows you to have a for greater opportunity to not be screened out
Mhm.
because someone has a bias against people that have been working for 20 years or more.
Okay.
mm,
So I think that is like really important. I mean, I just recently updated my resume. I actually argued with the resume writer about what I thought it should be, and I finally had to say, I'm operating off of historical data. This person is telling me what's current, and so I tend to say respect the professionals that you are maybe seeking counsel from, and just be open to some experiences and see what happens. If you don't get any applicants, any job interviews from that resume, then maybe you change it. But those are some things that I think that are helpful.
Good. Thank
mm.
you.
Can we had a few comments. I think Roz said that GSK
Mm,
actually had accommodations for menopause. So that's outstanding, Roz. Yes, she
Mm.
said when I worked for GSK, they made accommodations for menopause. And since I was in HR and comms, I have the presentation. More companies should do the same. I agree. I wonder, Roz, can you drop in the chat what those accommodations were? Naila said,
Nalia, my
Malia,
offspring.
I'm sorry, that's your daughter. Communicate with young coworkers and don't make assumptions based on their age. I often feel that older coworkers underestimate my intelligence. Great point.
mhm,
And talk down to me because we know how to be the aunties because I'm a young woman. That's a great point.
mhm.
That's a great point. Y'all hearing this? Stop talking down
Yes,
to the young people.
give them the respect.
Yes. And honestly, I think that's why I call myself the auntie, because I'm not quite your mom, but I can kind of give you a little bit of wisdom and sage wisdom without you feeling like I'm trying to like tell you what to do. I'll just
Mhm.
ask, have you considered? So what if? And make sure those questions are when I'm trying to make a statement to a younger professional, I do it through asking questions. So
Yeah,
what
curious
happens if?
mindset, right?
Yes.
Mhm, mhm. So Tiffany says, I think there's a lack of real communication with Black professionals in white spaces.
Can
That's a
can she expand on that question? Can we ask Tiffany a question back?
yeah,
Yes,
she's
we
still
asked Tiffany a
online.
question.
Uh, so when you say real communication with Black professionals in white spaces, what do you mean? Like,
Okay.
Okay,
can
we'll
she
see if
do
she'll pop back
She-
in.
Okay,
she'll text it.
okay.
Okay.
And we're gonna get the presentation too. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So question for you, Yolanda, as they're typing their answers in. For women who love their organization but want a different lane, what's the right way to bring that up with HR or their leadership?
So the first thing I say is you should have a friend in HR. I think it's so important that you have someone that could be at the table. So we talk about sponsorship, allyship, mentoring. We want to make sure there's someone that can take our needs forward. And oftentimes, if you have those conversations with your HR partner, you can talk to them about your career. And then they will, in turn, probably have a conversation with the decision maker of those next opportunities. And so I think that is really important that we spend time doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, making sure that your performance speaks for itself. What are people saying about you? What's your brand? And I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. But what are they saying about you so that you can know that you're going to get the support? And then also conveying what you need to your manager and
Mhm.
asking them how can they help you move your desires along. And I think that really is important because you open up that line of communication. And I always say people get promoted when they decide to promote you. So all you can do is stay ready. And hopefully it's not going to be long overdue, but it'll show up at a time that's going to make you feel like this was the right timing.
Yes, I know like HR, like having a strong relationship with the HR partner is good. And I think Tiffany popped back in and said like most HR professionals are white. Yolanda's not. I don't know. Maybe in California, I don't know like the demographics, West Coast, East Coast, South. We don't have the stats for that, but I don't know if that's something
A
to be.
lot of them are white women,
Mhm.
35 to 50 years old, and it can be a challenge. So I tend to, I tend to spread myself. People know that they can come and ask me,
Nice.
so I'm going to make myself available. Remember, the thought process and how we engage is different culturally.
Mhm.
And one of the things I would say is make sure that it doesn't sound like a complaint because they love to bring up like they were complaining or they're not happy. Do not let people put the words in your mouth to describe your experience. And as an HR
That's good.
professional, I've had to go to my colleagues and say, well, why did you use that word? So we have to check each other. And
Right.
so, while I'm not in every conference room in America, I know that I've been brave enough. And does that grow my career? Probably not. But you know what? This is God's work. And so I'm going to do what's right that's going to help move the next person along.
And that's why that diversity in all levels is so important because that
Important.
cultural competency component. So thank you for that for sure.
Yes.
So
Yes. Tiffany, I'm going
It's
to hug you. Yes.
It's
yeah,
hard for them to understand how we talk, how we understand and we communicate with others. I have to constantly try harder than my white coworkers. I'm stressed more and I'm overseen. Yes.
Yeah. Can I offer Tiffany just a quick response to that?
for
Sure.
sure.
One of the things that my colleague told me recently, she's like, you want to do it right and you want to make sure it's better. They just want to do it. So when you start showing up with the right policies, the right approach, it makes it harder for them to kind of get away from your leadership and guidance. When the reality of it is, well, she's difficult. No. That's the job that you put me here to do. And so when you start doing your job, oftentimes there is a challenge to you doing a job because it's this uncomfortable. So I always say in these spaces, Tiffany, oftentimes people want you to show up where they are comfortable, but not focusing on your competence.
Word.
And that's important. Oh man.
We popping off. Let's go. Cynthia said,
Oh,
Cynthia at my
I'm gonna
last
pray for her,
company,
Cynthia,
we had a
whoever
black
she
HR
is.
rep, but
She
she was
was not.
not very engaging and willing to see. So we all skin folks say, what's that saying?
All kin folks are not
folks.
skin folks.
That part. Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
we could go on with probably things like this, and I want to make sure we get back on track. But thanks for that, Cynthia. That I've had those experiences too.
Yeah.
So, but we got to talk about it though. We need to support each other. So thank you for that, Cynthia.
Yeah, HR gets a HR gets a bad rap. I will say that. In your defense, Yolanda,
She's
I'm
like,
the
there,
good one.
there are
Fair.
some good HR reps out there, but
yes.
yes.
But maybe for a future topic, as we kind of think about, conversations, there's a real opportunity for us to sit down as a group and understand what it is that we need and how can we support one another, because we
Yeah.
know the norm is often, well, everything's shaken up. I don't know what's normal anymore.
Right.
But we know that we have to care for each other that much more.
Right.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
daughter, my oldest daughter, is an HR professional and has her HR certification, her degree, and has worked in HR. And unfortunately, she's having a hard time breaking into the field and applying to jobs in HR. So there are, I think some young Black professionals trying to break in HR. But as you said, Yolanda, if they are white women holding those positions, and what I've seen, especially with the school, people don't leave those HR jobs. They stay
Mhm.
for a
Mhm.
year in those positions. So when it's for one time to get in, they usually bring in their, somebody they know or they're already grooming to take over those positions. It's just been my experience in watching my daughter and trying to really get into HR and corporate, really having a hard time. I don't know if it's just the season or the administrate, like what's going on, but they're
Mhm.
trying to get in. And Tiffany
Yeah.
Jackson is in school for HR
Very
too. Well,
good.
let's go.
I, I wanted to jump in here a minute and talk about expectations of managers because Yolanda, you talked about conveying to your manager your aspirations, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that I coach managers on, as well as direct reports on a lot, is that the expectation of who drives your career typically is not set. Managers typically don't come up and say, hey, either I want you to drive your career, or we're going to partner and drive your career, or I'm going to, definitely help you drive your career. I will take that responsibility on my shoulders. They typically don't say that. And so, as the direct report, you have to wonder, you have to guess, right? So I usually coach my managers and tell them to set that expectation. They always assume, not always, but a lot of times they will assume that, well, they should know they have to drive their own career. Well,
Mhm.
but you're their manager and you're responsible for their growth and development. So have you set that expectation? So that's one side of the coin. And then for the direct report, um, I would say to err on the side of your boss is expecting you to drive your career. So you have to speak up, manage up, and let them know what you want to do, where you want to go, and not just say it and drop it, but hold them accountable and ask them, hey, this is where I want to go. How can you help me? This is what I want to do. What opportunities can you give me, or what visibility can you help me obtain in order to do these? So be sure to definitely convey your aspirations, but also hold them accountable. Just, be like a dog with a bone and ask them. Don't, I mean, it's like, how you say, oh, I really want to do X. Well, that's not asking for help.
That's just making a
Ask
statement.
is
Mm-hmm.
yes. Ask, how can you help me do X, Y, or Z? And then that causes them to then have to act.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Because it's like using them as a resource, basically, is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Good.
that's just a little tidbit.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I could just add one quick thing to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in most organizations, they'll say you're responsible for driving your career.
Mm-hmm.
That is a scapegoat for the leaders. What are you responsible for? And so,
Mm-hmm.
Iris, I'm restating what she just said. I just wanted to just put an emphasis on it. They might
Mm-hmm.
not be able to get you all the way to where you want to go, but make sure that they understand short steps. And y'all, what I would really strongly encourage, if you know you're trying to grow and build a skill, use the employee resource, the benefits. like your tuition reimbursement, you should get every certification you could think of while you're in a company.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we're so busy working, we don't stop. And so that could be part of the manager's accountability. Allow me to spend X amount of hours per week, a month, a year in order to be able to move myself further. And that's real tangible support.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some things to think about.
And align with that, how important is it, like reskilling? You're saying getting those certificates when pivoting in midlife. Like, how important is that? Do you have some examples?
Well, I can speak for like PMP, project management professionals. There is a body of work that we often put people in. They call themselves project managers, but they don't have the foundation. And then there's a lot of churn and a lot of, performance issues. And so the manager's like, I've got to hire me someone that's certified. That is a valuable certification. It can be used across any industry or any department. When I think about manager development, if there are how to lead a team, information and training, take it. So there are lots of opportunities for you to grow your skill set based on where you're going. And so, but we often leave that money on the table. That's real money. When I decided to become a mediator, my last employer paid for my mediation training. Like, thank you. So you can use those benefits in order to help move you forward and own your career development. That's what you really own. The decision on what's next, that's what he or she owns.
So Yolanda, what role does personal branding play when you're redefining yourself after years of being in a particular field?
Huge. I think it's so important because you now have to be able to, you have to talk about yourself as a new product. What are you offering to the marketplace? And so when you are trying to identify your next steps that's different than what you've been doing, you know that you've got to be flexible on opportunities. They may not look at this, they may not be at the same level that you are at, but they would definitely have some opportunity for you to expand your knowledge. What you show up as, people will assign a title to you. Am I being a collaborative person? Am I not? So, some behavior type things that you have to watch for. Social media, what are you putting on social media? Don't tell everything you think on social media. Not a good idea. Because people are looking. I look. When I go into LinkedIn and see someone's searching my profile, I'll go type into Instagram or Facebook to see what do they have. And most people have their profiles wide open. So you're able to basically see how people are branding themselves, which could be completely different than which they think they're branding themselves. So those are just a few things. Also, one other thing I was going to say, be able to pitch who you are. We call them like your position statements or your intro. When people say, what do you want to do? How many people are really comfortable? And so there's a acrostic. I think that's how you say the word, acrostic. So I always say you should be able to tell someone what your profession is, what your expertise is, like what you're expert in, what types of organizations you worked in, and the strengths that you bring. That right there is just a summarization of your overall brand. And if you can communicate that, that is going to go a long way. It's like the elevator pitch. Oh, so tell me about yourself. Sometimes you guys know you're going into, people are meandering. It's like 4 minutes later. But we want to be quick and succinct. And that is really part of the branding, understanding what that is.
Gotcha.
Yes. So that's what I was going to, there's a note from Pet Pal, my Pet Pal.
Says, what is the old adage? We need a coach, a sponsor, and a mentor. How important are those for career development?
Huge. And you need an ally. Let's add an ally to it. Because if you have a coach, if you have a mentor, if you have, what was the third thing that was there?
Sponsor.
The coach is going to show you how to do it. The sponsor is going to be at the table when you're not in the room. The mentor is going to be the place where you can kind of just let it all out. And that is
therapist too. You need a
and
therapist.
a therapist. You have a therapist that's going to be able to keep you from like tilting over. Yeah.
Push you up the
Right.
Super important for career development.
Absolutely.
And super important for career movement to go from one level to the next level. You need all those people in your corner.
Build a team around you, and you may lean on other or depending on where you are. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, that was good.
So
Yolanda, go ahead.
For those who are taking notes, I wanted to repeat the position statement, and it spells PETS. P is for profession, E is for expertise, T is for types of organizations you have worked in, and S is for strengths. Profession, expertise, types of organizations, and strengths. So
yes, I love a good acronym for sure. Thank you.
Too.
So Yolanda, can you, considering like the landscape and like philosophies of companies now, how do you show up different to be sure like you're playing by the new rules, or what are they? You know, like there's AI, there's so many new rules in this climate. Like, how do you make sure like you're how to navigate that? Do you have any suggestions?
Yes.
And I know when we talked earlier, you talked about something, and I think you leaned into, Iris, with like values and trust.
Yes. Let me. The organizations are the world is churning. It is not the world we knew 6 months ago, 12 months ago. It is different. And so I think the thing that we have to make sure is our values align with the company values, and the company needs to stick with their values. So this is where you get a chance to decide, like, can I work in this environment or not? I think you focus on building trust. Knowing that you can trust them and they can trust you. That is the best thing that I can offer, because when there's trust, then there's more movement to the positive side. But it is very difficult. I mean, the people, we know 50% of the people think differently than us, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on. And so before we didn't have all that to worry about, because you knew there was 30% of the people that were different. So I think it's really important that you just find a safe space. This is the values of the company, and can you live with that? So I mean, that's a big question, and I'm sorry I don't have a better answer.
No,
I want to add to that.
That work for Amazon and big corporations that sponsor certain things, and again, your values or what you believe in, and you work for a company that may, support different things. That can be tough. Go ahead, Iris.
I was just going to add to that. As you said, with the values, don't compromise your values. But in order not to compromise your values, you first have to know what your values are. So I would say definitely take some time to write down your values, and then, put them on a scale and see, does this company that I'm working for align with my personal values, right? Or can I work for a company that values X? The other thing I would say in this new landscape is to stay in a collaborative mindset. Not a cooperative mindset, meaning you're not just going to go in and do a job, do what they tell you to do, and that's it, and you go home. Collaborative mindset means you show up with all of your creativity, you show up with all of your ideas, you show up with your voice, and also allowing others to do the same. So it's okay if people disagree with you, right? Because we're all creative. We all have our own opinions. And so that is huge right now in companies, is to be able to collaborate. So you want to show up with that mindset, and not just a mindset. You need to show up with that type of language. Yes. Right. So our language needs to represent that we are collaborating. What do you think? I hear you, but have you thought about X? Or do you have any other ideas on how we can do this better? right? It's not shutting people down, no, saying no, we're going to do it this way, that sort of thing. So that's one thing. The other thing, and then with your manager, having a collaborative mindset with your manager, it's more of help me help you. I'm here to help you get to where you want to go. And so we want to make sure that that's the posture we're in. And then engaging in active listening. It is so important that we listen to what's going on around us, that we listen to what people are saying and listen to what they are not saying, so that you are aware of what's going on in this new landscape, right? That you're just not oblivious, you're showing up so that you know exactly what type of culture you are functioning in every day. So that's what I would say about, being able to navigate this new culture.
Man, the time has went by so fast. We only have a few more minutes left. So, and I want to make sure, because I think this may be a question that people have, like layoffs, who's been through layoffs and a pause or a burnout. Like what, I don't know, quickly, Yolanda, if you can speak to like layoffs and, the shame that people may carry, like how to kind of get through that. And we'll wrap it up here for the sake of time.
Okay, real quickly. Unfortunately, layoffs are just part of doing business now. So most companies once you have one, you kind of get over it and you can start using that. And the reasons for these layoffs really is to drive the bottom line. So we need to understand that. Number two, you don't have to be ashamed of being laid off, because you're no longer experiencing this as one person that failed. The organization is making corrections, and that's really important. We have to rebuild. You have to rebuild by having a plan. So be prepared, write a plan, keep a schedule while you're in that layoff. Kind of keep some normalcy. Volunteer, be accountable for being someplace, and celebrate the little victories. That's really important. And another thing is an accountability partner, someone that's going to help you make sure that you stick to the things that you've committed to yourself. And then lastly, for the sake of time, rest, take a nap. When people keep asking, what are you doing? How are you going to do it? I don't know. I'm just going to go to sleep right now. And that is a real thing. While we get our rest, that's really important. So I just want to encourage you to know that you're not a failure. You're not by yourself. If you find yourself, it's an opportunity that God has given us to pause. And so we need to stop to hear that. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, Yolanda. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I think we probably should have you back, because there's a whole bunch of things we didn't get to. You've been so knowledgeable. Really, really thank you for joining us today.
Yes. And yes, thank you, Yolanda. Yolanda, can you tell them real quickly how they can get in touch with you?
Yes. So you can find me at yolandaowens.com, and that's for N2N HR Solutions. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, and you'll find me under Yolanda Mallory Owens on LinkedIn.com. So Yolanda Owens, easy enough website, or go to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm here. I will answer any questions that you might have. So just call me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, do that.
Thank you again to our listening audience for joining Heartline Lifeline. Stay connected to me at dmpcoaching.com or on IG at dmpcoaching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to GOD Radio 1 on YouTube and on Facebook, and continue to join the conversation.
Yes, and you can find me at mindtomendtherapy.com. So please, reach out, and we'll wrap up our show. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So deeply wounded, but don't say a thing. Too afraid of what the people may say and think. So you just sit there and you suffer in silence.